Well, the weather is nice today, so I decided to go ahead and do some work outside. One of the things we're doing is changing the headlights out on my wife's car. She's got a nice little Ford Taurus that we bought used from a friend of ours, but the headlights were glazed over on it, or crazed and yellowed, so they weren't very bright. So we got new headlights for her, so we're changing those out now. She doesn't do near as much driving at night now as we used to. When she worked in the city at the pool, she would get up every morning at 5 o'clock to go to work and come home at 4 or so, and it was always dark going both directions. Still, this time of the year, there's a lot of dark hours, so anyway, she wanted to get those fixed, and I found some new headlights for her. We're getting those put on now. I had the Bobcat, the skid steer. The backlights on it weren't working properly, and the red light lenses stick out a little bit past the door for the engine cowling, and wind up breaking the plastic on those. And then the bulbs got wet or something and burned out, so we didn't have any lights on the back of the Bobcat. Most of the time it doesn't matter, but I get to plowing snow and I get down on the highway plowing snow, and it'd be nice to have those lights back there for people driving up and down the road, especially if it gets late in the afternoon or early evening when it's dark. The Bobcat's white and the snow's white, so if we don't have lights on it, it might disappear in the background, especially the way some of these people drive. Well, anyway, I got new lenses for that and new bulbs for that, and I just got that fixed. Then I've got one tire that loses air. Those tires are so hard, the sidewalls are so hard on them that they don't flex or show anything when they're low on air. Usually I'm careful going around the corners and stuff, and the skid steers, of course, two side wheels turn at the same time and on the same side, and so you stop the ones on the opposite side from turning, and it kind of skids around. It puts a lot of side load on those tires. I try to keep from doing that because it not only wears the tires out, but it tears the ground up too. But when it's winter time, when you start plowing snow, I start getting to turn a little bit more and put a little more side load on there, and the tires are cold and it's really hard to tell when they're low. So I know that one tire gets low, so I check it every once in a while to make sure it's got enough air in it. But when we came back from down south and we had about a foot of snow on the ground here, and we'd spent a week traveling down there with the doctors and running around through the traffic down there, and then going to the airport at 6 o'clock in the morning, and all the TSA hassle just puts my teeth on edge. And then it was blowing 70 in Juneau, and it was rough landing there, and the trip down to Petersburg was rough. We didn't know whether we were going to make it in. And anyway, we got in late in the afternoon. It was almost dark, so I just jumped in the Bobcat to plow the snow because my wife had to go to work early the next morning. And anyway, I didn't check the tire for air. Well, it was cold and the air compressor was froze up, and I didn't want to get it started up and stuff. So anyway, that tire was low and it popped the bead on it. Well, those things are so stiff on that when the bead pops on it, I can't get it to pop back on. It's just too hard on my back anymore. I could get the old ones to pop on. They were softer, but these tires here are just so hard that I can't get them to pop on. Bead the seat on them once it breaks the bead. So we took it down to the repair station here, the store, and they didn't get to it, but I ordered a bead seater. It's a rubber donut that goes around the bead of the tire to kind of fill in between the bead on the tire and the bead on the wheel so that it holds air enough until you get the bead to blow out on the tire. Anyway, I've got that on there and I'm working on it. So the other thing I'm doing is working on this porch extension. I got this channel iron I dug out of my pile, and I don't know where this channel iron came from. I got it, it was, what was it, a 10-foot length or something like that. Anyway, I don't know where I got it, but it's heavier wall stuff than what I used on the porch before, but it's the same size dimensionally. It's this 5 and whatever inches across here. Oh, I got that a while back and cut it to length and have had it sitting out here since then. Oh, I decided since the weather's good, I might as well work on it a little bit. This thing, I don't know where I got this piece of steel at, but it was sticking out in the dirt someplace when I got it, and it's got a lot of rust on it, and it's got a lot of scale on it, rusty scale on it and stuff. So I'm working on getting that cleaned up. I'll get that cleaned up, and then I'm going to cut some holes in it for welding and weld this on to extend out those rails that I put up there already on the house for the porch is I've got a needle scaler, and I'm just going through knocking all the scale off of here, getting it loose before I run it with a wire brush and a grinder to polish it up, and that'll help save the wire brush and the grinder. So I'll work on those a little bit for the rest of the daylight, get those cleaned up. I'm probably not going to finish those today. We'll see what the weather does tomorrow, whether I work on them again or not. But I have to go up and dig out the plates that go on the end of it that the boards dig on. They've got some angle that's 12 inches by 5 inches or 6 inches or something that I was cutting off and welding on the end of these to stick up to screw my end plates into, and I've got to go dig that out of the snowbank too. I got all the scaly rust and most of the rust off of these pieces, these channel iron pieces. I did 2 of them yesterday, and I got the 3rd one today. Got too dark to finish up last night. And they're probably good enough, except for the edges here where you can't get in with those needles. They're probably good enough the way they are to paint them with one of those conversion coat primers. I'm going to clean them up a little bit more with a wire brush because I've got a weld on them, but they're a lot better than they were. I used my Magic Fingers Tingling Bernie Brothers scalp massager here. I started out with this one here. This is one that I stole from a friend of mine about 25 or 30 years ago to use with my son's car when we were cleaning it up and repainting the frame on it. And I went to give it back to my friend, and he said keep it. He didn't want anything to do with it anymore. He'd had enough of it. So anyway, I still got it, but it's losing a lot of the fingers on there, and it wasn't real effective. But it's just a regular air hammer, and then it's got this piece on here, and then it's got these hardened needles in there, hardened rods in there that you hammer with, but they're starting to fall out. So I went and dug out this one here. I bought it at Harbor Freight, I don't know how many years ago. It's been in on the shelf in there for 7 or 8 years now. I knew I was going to use it sooner or later, but anyway, I went and dug it out, and it worked pretty good. It worked fine. It's a little different. You got to hold it up, and the air hammer is straight on it, so you hold it up and hold it down, and I can kind of let the weight of it work on that. But it is long and kind of unwieldy. So this is all it is. There's the air hammer portion right there, and then you got, I probably should take this apart and dry it out. Then you've got all this little plate in here with all the needles in it. That's hardened steel, and they have a tendency to wear or fracture and break off. These little nipples here on the end of them where they go in that hole that hold them in, and then they fall out. And then pretty soon you wind out. There's not a whole lot of them left in there. So that's that. So I had another one of these that I bought from Napa a few years ago, and it didn't hold up very well. I've got pieces of it here someplace, but it didn't hold up very well. But this Harbor Freight one actually held up pretty good. Well, it's not as nice today as what it has been. It warmed up a little bit. Maybe it didn't warm up, I don't know. I guess about the same temperature, 35 degrees. But it's snowing now. It's snowing pretty good right now. It's supposed to have been raining. Hey, Hannah. Hey, Hannah. You're a good girl. But it's snowing pretty heavy right now. I want to get this part of this porch project done while I got it started. I got those channel iron rails cleaned up with the needle gun. So while I'm on that, I thought I'd go ahead and get this part here, the angle welded on it that's going to hold the timbers on for the floor joists. So this is what I've got. This piece of angle, it's 6 inches by 10 inches, and it's 3/16 of an inch. But it was some kind of ledger board or something, or ledger that they used when they were building the pool, and they had some of it that was either wrong or extra or something, I don't know, but we got some of this stuff. This will get welded down to the bottom of the angle. Angle will come up here 6 inches, which will leave 4 of this sticking up, and then the timbers that are the floor joists will come up against this. When I went up and dug that out of the snowbank, and it was all full of ice and snow, so I stuck it in. I got a fire going in the stove, in the shop today. I was trying to warm that Bobcat tire up so I could work on it a little bit. Anyway, I stuck this by the stove and melted the ice and crap off of it. I'll go ahead and measure some of these pieces off and cut them off. That's got some pretty good thick paint on it. I tried cutting it before with the plasma torch and it wouldn't work. The oxyacetylene torch works just fine. I got those cut off. Not too bad of a job. Get a little bit of dross on them and stuff, so I'll get the grinder out, smooth those edges up and stuff, and then I'll have to grind the paint off where they're going to get welded on. I threw them out in the snowbank, cool them off, and had to holler at the dogs to keep them from going and fetching them. If I get these on, these done, and weld it on and get those things prepped up, and then when next time we get an open break in the weather, then I can get those welded on. Who knows when that's going to be. We don't have a groundhog here. We had Porcupine Day and the porcupine said we only had 6 more months of winter. So it was nice out here today. This afternoon it was raining and snowing most of the morning, kind of nasty, but I decided to come out here in the shop under the cover and start working on these extensions for that framing again with steel. My flight instructor certificate expires the end of this month, so I had to go in and take a course on getting it renewed, and that took a few days to do that, so I was kind of out of commission on doing any other work for a few days. So anyway, I just come out and worked on these again. I took angle grinder with a wire brush on them and went over and got all the loose rust and stuff off of them and shined them up pretty good now. So they'll take Corosil good and they'll take welds. I went ahead and took the sander and cleaned up some of the divots on these where they had marks on them that stood out proud. I'd already beveled these edges up where the welds are going to go. Beveled this edge here, that'll be all welded in there. This edge here will be welded on, and this is a 2-foot mark here, there'll be a weld here. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to drill out some holes in here in this web to get in there and put some more bead on there, to put some more weld on there. I'm sure this will be plenty strong enough for what it is because it's going to rest on that I-beam and be welded onto that beam that's there, but some's good, more is better. Well, I'll get this one in the shop and do that. When I was working on the airplane, I got a set of rotor broaches to use, and I used on sheet metal parts and the kydex and some other things on the airplane project, and I really liked the way those things work. The kit that I got was kind of a standard kit. It had 5/16 up to 3/4, but I needed to cut some bigger holes in something. I wanted a 1-inch hole for some, oh, I know what it was. It was for that backseat heater control on the airplane. I needed some 1-inch holes in the sheet metal on that, and I tried some regular hole saws that I bought in town here, and they didn't work worth a darn on the stainless steel. I ordered this large diameter hole cutter kit. This one goes up to 1 inch, or this is a 1.5 inch. Anyway, I've only used it once with the 1 inch on there, but I really like the way those cut. What I was going to use to cut holes in those channel beams there that are going on the porch, and I got one of those set up with my 1.5 inch bit. I was kind of worried that it might not be quite big enough hole to really get into to get good access in to weld, but when I was looking in my drawer here on the drill press, I found this carbide circle hole cutter that I got. The reason I got that was the same reason I got the Blair hole cutter. I couldn't cut through the stainless steel, and I went through several regular hole saws and it didn't work worth a damn. So I got this. I don't know whether I got it off of eBay or Banggood or someplace, but anyway, it's a cheap one. It's got a real small shank on it, but it worked pretty good. It worked a lot better than the regular hole saws in that stainless steel. And this is a 2-inch diameter hole, so that's a little bigger than the 1.5 inch one, so I think I'm going to try that on this steel and see how it works on it. It's young again and could hold that up, so I'll go ahead and see if I can weld that, or get this cut. Carbide tooth bit on the main bit. I just broke the pilot drill. Oh well. Yeah. I'll see how this works without a pilot bit. enough power in this drill to keep enough pressure on that. It's just a fine line between keeping it cutting and getting it stuck. Okay, I think I'll put another one in that, and then I'll put 2 each in the other 2 pieces, so 5 more holes to go. I'm gonna have to put earplugs in. That thing's pretty damn noisy. I got 3 holes cut. It started on the 4th one, but it's pretty hard on my motor. It's on the drill press. Motor was starting to leak. I had to quit and wait for it to cool off. Just not enough power to do that efficiently, but it's what I got. So we'll let the motor cool off and do those other ones. I got the rest of those holes, the rosette holes, drilled out in those channel iron beams or channel iron sections. Got 6 nice little plugs here out of those. Figure something to use those for someday. I let the drill press sit overnight to cool off the motor. It got pretty hot enough that smoke was leaking out of it. Anyway, the next thing to do is to weld these angle pieces here on. But before I do that, I'm going to drill those out, the holes out for the mounting bolts on these. This gets welded onto that channel iron here and then up to here, and then a timber goes in against this, gets attached to it for the floor joists, purlin, whatever you want to call it. So I got to attach these with some bolts, some screws into the wood through this metal. I've got to drill holes for that. I'm using what they call these timber lock screws instead of lag bolts. They're supposed to be stronger than lag bolts. And actually the ones that I'm going to use are for this are flathead screws. So I'm going to drill these holes out 1/4 inch for clearance for these screws, these bolts, and then I'll countersink them. Well, I've got what is that, 17/64 drill bit in there to drill a clearance hole for a 1/4 inch bolt, and I've got these holes staggered. This is my line. This is where the channel iron is going to come up to, and then I put a line in here 1 inch above that so that I don't get a screw too close to that so it doesn't blow the wood out. What I want to do is I want to make my holes so that no 2 screws go in the same grain line on here. The pattern doesn't make any bit of difference other than that. I just don't want any 2 screws to go in through the same grain line on the wood so that it doesn't split it. The whole pattern doesn't make any difference except for that, so I'll go ahead and start drilling those holes out. Okay, the holes in one plate are down. I got 3 holes done, so I got 2 more plates to do, or 6 more holes. The first thing I'm going to do is deburr these holes on the back side, and then I'll countersink them on the other side. And I don't have any good, what are they, 80-degree countersinks or 85-degree countersinks that are standard for most flathead screws and stuff. I've got is 100-degree countersinks, which are what we use in aviation for rivets and screws and stuff there. So I'm going to go ahead and deburr these, and I'm going to countersink the holes on the other side with this. And then I've got a 80-degree deburring tool. I'm going to see if I can't straighten those holes out or flare them out a little bit more for the flathead screws. Anywho, alright, that deburring bit that I had, or that countersink that I had, was a pretty nice tool. It worked pretty good. It still is a pretty nice tool. I got several of those when I was working on the airplane. This one here is not. It's a piece of junk. I got it from Harbor Freight. Okay, it's working kind of. Alright, that worked. So those are ready to be welded on there now. Got those holes countersunk out. Well, now I'm going to take everything up to the basement and work on it up there. I'm going to go ahead and use that Miller 211 welder to weld that together since I got it out and set up. I've done all of this stuff before on that Century 130. It's worked, but that thing is marginal for doing that heavy of a steel on there. It's just 110 volt, and I wound up blowing circuit breakers on it. I've made it work, but I'm going to try that Miller 211 so I can plug it into 220, and it's meant for doing the bigger stuff. The last time I used it was on my airframe on the airplane, to weld on the brackets for the aileron cables, and so I've got it set up with 20 gauge wire, and I need to change it over to 30 or 35 gauge. I'll have to see what I can find. I don't have any C25, but I do have some CO2. CO2 is supposed to be better for penetrating welds anyway, I don't know. So I'll have to see if I can find some 30 or 35 gauge wire and change over to that and get it all set up to weld. But I'm gonna give it a try. I haven't used it hardly since I got it, so I might as well use it now that I got it out on the cart and I can get it out and get it around.